I just got a list of people signed up for the circle today, and I was amazed. There are over 50 men in the circle. Wow. If you're like me, you go to a lot of events, different types of events. I often feel outnumbered because there's so few other men in my yoga class, in the Unity Church that I go to, in Toci programs that I've been involved with. So this is fantastic that we've got such a large turnout. And of course, a lot of people won't be with us in this very moment during the live broadcast, but they will be watching. And so they are indeed part of the circle. I wanted to start out with a little introduction, explaining something of who I am, because I know that on that list there were a lot of names that I didn't recognize. In addition, there are many that I've worked with before that I've cultivated deep and abiding friendships with, so it's great to have that mix. But these comments are primarily for people that don't know me. I was wondering about how to introduce myself. What I came up with is to tell a couple of what I feel are significant stories about my development. I was a biology student in the university because I thought that the study of life was the most important thing, most interesting thing that I could possibly study. However, after graduation, there weren't many jobs available as a field biologist, which is what I was trained to be. So I took a job teaching public high school, teaching primarily biology classes. And I really liked that job. I stuck it out 7 years, and that's pretty tough, being in the trenches. I taught low-level classes, and so a lot of behavior problems in there. But somewhere along the way, I lost my faith in the product I was supposed to be pushing. So many of those kids came from troubled homes. They had problems with drugs. Their girlfriends were getting pregnant. There was a lot going on. Gang membership, a lot of violence. Somehow, teaching things like cell biology didn't seem very significant to me. So when I had a chance to take a job as a field biologist with the National Laboratory, I went ahead and took it. Switched careers. And I was really living my dream then, because that was the job I had been trained for. I was making a ton of money. I knew I would never see that kind of money again. Look, there was a lot of prestige. I pretty much wrote my own ticket there. I designed my own programs. I wrote up the results. It was really a wonderful situation. But after 4 years, I was finding myself drawn towards volunteer work, and there was a fire at a spiritual community in northern New Mexico. I went there for a week to help out, and I realized those people could really use some of my skills. I'd been trained in restoration ecology. I knew what to do to protect the land from erosion, to help bring it back after the devastating fire that almost wiped the foundation out. They lost, I think it was 24 out of 27 buildings. So they really experienced a serious impact. So I quit my high-paying, prestigious job and went to live in a spiritual community. I was there for 3 years. Not full-time, but most of the time. Changed my life. One of the best decisions I ever made. Yet I still hadn't found my own teacher. I was doing Buddhist meditation, I was doing Sufi dancing, I was doing so many different things, different practices, just lots of different things, but in a way none of them felt like me. And in 2002 I met Raven Smith, a Toltec master who I apprenticed with. I apprenticed with him for 10 years, and I learned so much about practical energetics in a form of spirituality that wasn't abstract at all, that could be lived. And that's why I'm here today, speaking to you, leading you through this men's initiation circle. Because different places in my life, I made choices that later defined who I grew into. And that's going to be a topic that we'll be working with today. So I see we're 5 minutes into it. I think that it's probably a good time to go into grounding. I like doing an initial grounding whenever we have a program like this. Helps us to connect, to go a little deeper. So often we get caught up in the things of the day. There are all these energetic swirls going around and pulls on our attention. So let's just close our eyes and let go of some of those attachments, some of those energetic tentacles that might have glommed onto us today. Use the breath to draw yourself inward. The Eastern Indians feel that each breath is a breath of life. We're breathing in not only oxygen and gases, but we're breathing in a vital life force called prana. So imagine that prana coming in on the inhale. And on the exhale, just relax. Each breath taking you deeper into that relaxation, letting go of any tension or tightness. Deepening your relationship to yourself. Now from this place of stillness and silence, I ask you to connect with your masculinity, not the genitalia, not the sexual organs, but see if you can find a place in your physical form that somehow embodies at least a part of your masculinity. If you get stuck, I'll give you some suggestions, but I want you to investigate for a minute or so on your own first. See if you can find such a place. If you still haven't come up with a specific location, maybe you could focus on the upper arm of your dominant hand, the musculature there. That tends to be one defining characteristic of males. Or if that one doesn't work for you, maybe the Adam's apple, another prominence of the male body, and how we express ourselves through the throat. And if you don't like that one, maybe the will chakra, right in the abdomen. A place where we put together intention, where a lot of our male expression in the world originates from. So using one of those, or one that makes sense to you, feel into that place. And again, use the breath, the inhalation to activate, to bring in energy, and the exhale to relax into it. Feel the masculinity in that area, in your body. Now coming back to a more generalized sense of being embodied, perhaps moving your muscles a little bit to remind yourself that you are incarnated in a human body, not just one part where your attention was. Still feeling the power of the breath, and as you're ready, slowly opening the eyes. It's odd the way we connect with our masculinity. There are many different ways to do this. Some of them are healthy, some of them are not so healthy, and we're going to be discussing some of those tonight. Our language, my primary language, English, is somewhat limited in words that describe states that I would like to speak of. And to illustrate that, I've come up with a list of some Native American words, which we don't have easy equivalents for in English. In the Hopi language, the word Kawanisquatsi, which you may have heard of through that wonderful movie that was out, maybe 30 years ago now, with those images of great beauty contrasted with images of disturbing desecrations of the planet. Well, Kawanisquatsi in Hopi has a number of different meanings. It can mean crazy life, life in turmoil, life disintegrating, life out of balance, and a state of life that calls for another way of living. I feel that this Hopi term is very appropriate in referring to much of modern civilization, the Western cultures, the consumer cultures. It certainly seems to be a life out of balance, a life filled with a lot of unsustainable and reckless actions. We are not living in harmony with the earth and the things of the earth. And it's odd that we don't have a term by now that sums all that up as well as Kawanisquatsi does. Hotso is a Dene term. The Dene people are often referred to as Navajo, but Dene is the term that they prefer. It means earth surface people. And Hotso is a word that has much beauty to it. Let's see, the definitions I have here. It's said to be the most important word in the Dene language. And again, we don't have an equivalent. It's loosely translated as peace, balance, beauty, and harmony. Not one of those things, but all of those things together. So to be in Hotso is to be at one with and a part of the world around you. So Hotso is a state of internal order that's reflected externally. If someone is out of Hotso, they usually fall victim to illness. So a good word to know, a good word to have in our vocabulary, even if it's a borrowed word. I want to go through one last one. I just came across this one. Scalalitude. Scalalitude. That's a Salish word. The Salish are coastal people, live in the Northwest. And Anne-Marie Holmes writes, the Salish tribe has a term, scalalitude, which refers to a sacred state of mind when all things are in balance, and the spiritual dimension seems to predominate consciousness, which results in magic and beauty everywhere. So I think these are very worthy terms. Certainly we should maybe make a little room in our vocabularies, our extensive vocabularies, for such things as Hotso and scalalitude, because these can become goals, and not just distant goals, not something out there far away, almost unattainable, but goals that we achieve by bringing them more and more into our lives. More and more we become Hotso. We become scalalitude. Living in, get this right, living where magic and beauty are everywhere. Yeah. Well, a lot of us weren't raised around such things. A lot of us received some pretty heavy programming as males. Many of us had things laid on us, expectations laid on us, even before we were born. Families making plans. I guess one of the most famous ones is someone wanting their son to be a doctor, a lawyer, some prestigious position, and trying to bend them into that ideal, into that dream, which didn't come from the individual, came from the family before they even met the individual. I think this kind of projection is especially strong on men in our culture. Oftentimes men are identified with the roles they play, with the functions they perform. This can very greatly limit people's perceptions of us as whole beings. Our gender is certainly part of the mix, a big part of the mix, a big part of the mosaic. But it's not everything. And many times we get so identified with gender and gender-related things and projections based on gender that it blinds us to other things. There are a lot of prevalent beliefs in the society that are held culturally that many of us assimilate without even consciously realizing them. Many of these affect our expression of our inner being, the inner truth that we all have in there. I want to just pick out one to look at. And that's what I refer to as the myth of scarcity. There's not enough. So it can be there's not enough money. There are not enough women. There are not enough good jobs. There's not enough space. Whatever the individual consciousness fixates on, that not enough is a very insidious belief. So let's close our eyes again for a moment. And everybody imagine one of those things that I mentioned or something else, or it feels like there's not enough to you. Not ugh to go around, not enough for people to get their share. What does that feel like? What emotions arise when you think that? Really pursue it a little bit. Okay, now coming back, opening the eyes and just shaking that stuff off. I see that someone is not getting a picture. I'm not sure what the problem is. It seems like the broadcast is going fine. So other than refreshing, I'm afraid I don't have any other advice to offer. If anyone else is not getting a picture, please type that in the chat bar so we know. It's okay for 125. Okay, hey, Steve. Okay for Steve. So I think it's that individual computer. I don't know what to suggest. Maybe log off and come back on again. And, of course, that would be www.toci.org/free webcast. It seems like it's good for everybody else. Well, I'm not sure what you experienced with that little scarcity experiment, but I didn't like it. I felt a constriction, an energetic constriction in me when I was imagining there's not enough. I'm not going to get my share. Things are going to run out. And I think a lot of people, especially men, run around with this in the background. It's kind of like something on the computer, you know. It's draining energy off the CPU. It's using a certain percentage of available stuff, available resources. And so I want to have a look at this one, this idea that there's not enough. And the thing I came up with to investigate it with is money, because I think a lot of people, especially these days, have those concerns. They're going to run out of money. We hear stories about people who were reasonably successful and all of a sudden they lose their house. And I'm sure that many people think, oh, that could happen to me. You know, I'm in a similar situation. So let's just take a look at some facts about the not enough in our society in reference to money. Because we see that it leads to kind of a creepy place if we hold that belief, so it seems like we'd at least do some investigation to see, is that really what's going on? Well, I Googled some stuff, a couple of very recent articles. One's from CNBC, and it was entitled, Richest 1% Earn Its Biggest Share Since Roaring Twenties. The gulf between the richest 1% and the rest of America is the widest it's been since the Roaring Twenties. U.S. income inequality has been growing for almost 3 decades. Well, obviously, money's not in scarcity for some folks. Another article entitled, Richest 1% Hold 46% of the world's wealth. This is from Reuters. Global wealth has risen by 68% over the last 10 years. Imagine that. Global wealth has risen by 68% over the last 10 years. You know, on the basis that doesn't seem like there should be scarcity. Seems like it should be happy times all the way around. Reached a new all-time high of $241 trillion. I have no idea how much that is. I could write the number out. It's got a lot of zeros. But my brain, there's no way I can compute a number that large. And the United States accounts for nearly 3/4 of the increase. Wow. So there's a lot of money over here. A lot of money in our country. Average global wealth has hit a peak of $51,600 per adult, but this is spread very unevenly, with the richest 10% owning 86% of the total wealth. The top 1% alone owns 46% of all global assets. Wealth is going to continue to increase. Global wealth will jump a further 40% by 2018 to reach $334 trillion. So there's more wealth all the time. We're in the most prosperous period in the history of the world. It's not that it's scarce. It's that it's not divided very equitably. So just imagine how different that is from the myth of scarcity. In the myth of scarcity, you might feel that you have to compete with those closest to you for those limited resources, so you're sure you get yours. And once you get yours, you need some more just in case something changes to threaten your position. It's an insatiable addiction. More, more, more. Without the satisfaction of having enough, because it's always in jeopardy if things are scarce. Yet when we realize that's not actually what's going on here, there's actually plenty of wealth, and there's more wealth all the time. It's just not distributed justly. So those people that you might have thought of as competitors in a scarcity model could now very well become collaborators in a we need some more social economic justice model. Very different outcome, very different feeling. So a lot of these beliefs that we carry around, when we examine them, just even superficially, this didn't take very long at all. Sometimes we can see some cracks in there. If we're holding false beliefs, they're going to work against us. And as men, as the traditional providers in this culture, beliefs like scarcity hit us the hardest, because it would be up to us to go out and provide for our families, to be the breadwinners, to bring home the bacon, to do that stuff. Now, obviously, not everybody's living in that kind of traditional model, but a lot of people are. And so culturally, these ideas can be very persuasive. And that's heightened by the fact that we don't discuss them openly that much. A lot of us would really benefit from going through and cataloging some of these beliefs we have, especially around masculinity, and seeing, are those good fits for us? And are they true? If they're not true, why are we carrying them? Why are we acting off of lies? There are a couple of comments. Let me see here. And there will be an extensive question and answer session at the end if you want to hold them till then. Hi, Phil. How do you reconcile ecosystem limits to population size with not enough? Is there enough arable land for everyone? I doubt there is. So there's a scarcity of resources given our overpopulation. I see your point. As a biologist, I feel that overpopulation is something that's crazy out of control, and it's creating problems everywhere. But the truth is, if you don't do projections about what it's going to look like in the future, there is enough arable land right now. Now, obviously, if we keep exponentially growing the population, there's going to come a time when that's not true. But in our lifetimes thus far, there has been enough. It hasn't been distributed. Read an article that 40% of the food grown in the United States is wasted. 40%. It's incredible. We can do a lot better job. So I don't want to get too sidetracked into social justice and what needs to be done. I wanted to use this as an example of one belief that a lot of males carry within them that does a lot of damage. Creates fear, creates what I feel is a false need for competitiveness, keeps us divided, keeps us separate, which means it keeps us weak. When I introduced myself, let me give one more example, because this one was just so telling. You know, the richest people in the world, it's hard to compare them to other people because they just have so much. Like Carlos Slim in Mexico, he and his family have $73 billion. He's a telecom executive. And Bill Gates is right up there with him, Bill and Melinda, even though they gave away huge sum. I don't know what it was, like $35 billion to charity. They're right neck and neck. They're about $73 billion as well. So if we can't compare them to other people, we can compare them to countries. And a measure of a country's prosperity is the GDP, the gross domestic production. And that accounts for all the goods, all the products, all the services that a country produces in a year. And both Carlos Slim and Bill Gates are worth more than 2/3 of the countries on the planet produce in a year. Wow. That's a lot. And that's a lot of disparity. Well, how this relates to us is the beliefs we operate off of, in a very large sense, define who we are. And if we've got fear-based beliefs in there, we're going to act out of fear, and we're going to constrict ourselves. Just like I was feeling that constriction when we did the exercise. We're going to go around constricted. We're not going to have the ability to connect to our resources. So let's talk some about our resources. There's a lot to us in limiting beliefs. I came up with 3 different levels of roles and identifications that we can do. And so I just want to go through quickly on some that would apply to me. And as I'm doing this, you'd be thinking about things that would apply to you that are somewhat similar. We have societal roles. And these are ones that, for the most part, people can see us in. For me, it's like every week. People can see that I'm a father, can see that I'm a husband, can see that I'm a first responder. I'm doing that stuff all the time. And it's certainly a part of my makeup. A lot of people would have their primary job in there. That's a way they define themselves. It's something they do all the time. Well, another way of self-definition, another way of putting a label on ourselves, is things that we don't do necessarily all the time, but things we have done and that were very significant for us, that tend to cast us in a different light. So my list on this would include firewalking. I don't firewalk every week. I don't even firewalk every year. I've done it, maybe 30 times. But I think of myself as a firewalker because it's a significant thing that I do. Another thing would be skydiver. I've only done it twice. But those were significant events in my life. Had to overcome some hesitation to jump out of that plane both times. It was an affirmation of myself. Something within me just came through and said, yeah. So when I jumped, I wasn't forcing myself to jump. I did it with gusto. And that's because I could let that small, fearful part of myself sit in the back seat while the adventurous, courageous part took over and jumped out of the airplane. Another one for me would be ceremonial leader. I do it not on a regular basis, but when I do it, it's significant. There's a third level of self-definition. And this is the one that I really want you to think in terms of for yourselves. Archetypal. So this is something, a level of classification that distills a part of our being, a noble part of our being. And for me, I wrote down bringer of blessings. I see myself as that at times. That's one of the best things in my mind, to my judgment, that comes through me. Circle maker, bringing people together in good and healthy ways, to do ceremony, to honor, to celebrate. Servant of light. Just as in that initial grounding, I was talking about the prana, breathing the light in. The light has many, many meanings for me. It's more than energy. There's an aliveness there. There's an intelligence there. It's a way for me to connect to the beyond, to the divine. So I greatly honor my role as a servant of light. And one more, spirit world messenger. I'm a shamanic journeyer, so I do go to the other side a lot, get messages for people, and bring them back. But I don't do it every day. I might not do it every month. It might just be a few times a year, and yet it's such a strong identification for me that it is definitely a way that I define myself. So I'd like each of you right now to take a minute or two and to just see if you can come up with something similar to this, one of these archetypal roles that you have already done. Not something for the future, not imagined, not you dream that you want to be, but something that you've done at least once. And if you would, share that with us on the chat bar. I'd really like to see what you come up with. I'll wait till we have a couple up. Thank you. Oh. I'll give it just a few more seconds and start reading them. These are beautiful. Wow, a lot of good shares. This is great. Well, let me start reading some of these. Motivator. Yeah, powerful. Health coach. Sonic shaman. Yes, indeed. I know you are. Leader. Father, software architect, pilot, musician, seeker. Pilot, guardian, fixer of stuff. Water blessings and ceremony creator. Ooh, nice, gentle bear. Firewalker, pilot, fixer of stuff, circle keeper. Boy, we've got a lot of pilots on board. That's great. Firewalker, poet, sailor, builder of dreams. Ooh, I like it. Father, bacon bringer, life coach, listener. Yep. Neo-pagan priest. Wow. Musician, firewalker, leader. I know you are. Dancer, teacher, keeper of flame. Oh boy. All of a sudden, Quest for Fire ran through me, and the guy with the fire, and he's going through the lake, and the whole tribe's depending on him. Yeah, powerful, powerful. Peacemaker, listener, giver of deep commitments. Good. Father, home fellowship coordinator, Red Road coach. Ah, fantastic. I'm sure you feel the power of these associations and acknowledging that in a very real way, that's who you are. Maybe not all the time, maybe not everybody sees it, but in a very relevant way. That is a big part of your identity. Artist of the Spirit. Okay, Gypsy, or Toltec Gypsy. Yeah. Good stuff. Really good stuff. Messenger of Light. Fantastic. To my mind, when we reach inward in this way, looking for this kind of information, where is it that I have stood in a place where I have been that connected? And we recall these places, and we make them significant by bringing them forth, by expressing them. We're accessing our inner being. Also got Dreamer. Yeah, good one. Me too, brother. We get into that soul realm. You know, the outer stuff, the outer identifications, they just don't seem quite as compelling at times. They may be nourishing, it may be a real important part of our makeup, but here we're getting more into soul purpose. Creator of life. Ooh, dream surfer. Nice. Happiness provider. Wow, we're coming up with great stuff. Great stuff. This is inspired. And I imagine for at least some of you haven't thought of it in these words or this way yet. I realized it took a little while for people to get into it. But once you directed your attention there, you asked those questions and you received the answers. They were there already, waiting for the questions to be asked, waiting to be expressed. Co-creator. Yeah. Good, good, good. I was reminded a few days ago of an incident that happened when I think I was 6. I was in first grade, so I was 6 or 7. I used to have a mole. It was right up there. But I don't have a mole anymore. Because my mom never liked that mole, and she went to a doctor, and he said, yeah, it could develop into a tumor someday. Doesn't seem to be doing anything now, but it could be a problem sometime in the future. So my mom resolved to have that mole cut off. I was terrified. And I wasn't terrified of the operation. The doctor explained it to me. It's actually a fairly simple procedure. I wasn't going to feel much of anything. There might be a little bit of aching after the operation, like a day after, but I was going to have medication. You know, it wasn't fear of pain. It was a fear that whatever in me didn't seem to measure up to somebody else's expectation could be cut off, and I didn't have a say in it. I didn't even have a say about my own body. It felt like such a violation that a decision like that would be made for me. And, you know, age 6 or 7, I sort of see it from a different perspective now. Parents know better some of the time, but my angst was not considered into it. It was just going to be done, and it was done. There's still something of that in me. That people can be forced to conform, to go against what they feel is best for themselves. That they can be made to comply. In what might be a violation of their connection to their inner being. So that one stayed with me. It was sort of strange, as I mentioned. It just came up a couple of days ago. I hadn't thought about it for maybe 2 decades. But it's still a strong memory, still a strong story in me. And I hope that I gained strength from that incident. I hope that it was a prod that I would stand up for myself more, that I would, make my feelings known perhaps more forcefully than I did back then when I was 6 or 7 years old. I'm sure there was a powerful teaching in it for me even back then, but at the time I didn't see it. I just saw what I perceived as a violation. Also got angelic human. Yeah, good. One of my teachers, Sandra Ingerman, said something very succinctly that I want to share with you. She said, "We live in a time when we can express our souls, something that was not always true for preceding generations." I think that's very true. Now, we might have to go against societal expectations. We might have to stand up and say no to demands of family and friends. We might have to make uncomfortable and unpopular decisions. But for the most part in this society, we can express our souls if we choose to, if we really want to, if we're willing to go along with the consequences that might entail. I want to lead you through a short visualization on connecting with the ancestors, with your ancestors, your male ancestors. And I know some guys have real hard time with their fathers or their grandfathers, particular male relative in there, and maybe with very good reason. So if that's the case, just don't pick them to work with. We have thousands, tens of thousands of ancestors in our lineage, male ancestors. And so don't pick the troublesome ones to work with. So let's do a visualization together. Once again, closing eyes, pulling the energy inward, following the breath in. Stilling the mind. Calming the body. And in your mind's eye, I ask you to see yourself standing around a campfire. If you're not very good with images, that's okay. Just imagine the heat. Imagine the feelings you might be having standing around a campfire. And I ask you to call up the spirit of an ancestor, a male ancestor in your direct lineage, who had some of that archetypal quality that you recognize in yourself. Now, this could be somebody that you recognize. It could be somebody from 200 years ago. It could be somebody from when your ancestors lived in a tribal state. Just ask for someone to appear and to share something of themselves with you. And introduce yourself to this ancestor. Using that archetypal stuff, not what you do every day. As you say it, feel it, be it. Now thank them for appearing, whatever way they did. Express your gratitude. And now bring your consciousness back to where you are. Particular place, particular time, human body. Moving some of the muscles around. And as you're ready, slowly opening the eyes. Now, I'm not sure what you got out of that. Hopefully something good. Might have been rushed. My words might not have been in sync with what you were experiencing. If that's the case, I invite you to do it on your own. To call up a male ancestor from your line, a direct forebear, and be with them around the campfire or someplace that makes sense to you. And share that thing, that archetypal thing that you both have in common. Calling on the ancestors this way can be a great source of wisdom and guidance. And it's very healthy for us occasionally to go into that place where we are that archetypal energy. Not just thinking about it, but where we're feeling it and being it and showing it. Being right there. So even if you got something you might want to go back for a subsequent conversation. I'm going to open it up for questions in just a moment, but I have a suggested homework assignment if you're in the mood for homework. If you want to take this a little deeper, make it a little more personal. And that is to write a very short essay about yourself. Who you are. Not so much in terms of what you do every day, but those significant things and those archetypal things. I would suggest that you don't do this from a point of view of, well, I like this part and I'm trying to grow that part, but more from the perspective of a neutral observer writing about a character, perhaps in a fantasy novel. Be creative. You don't have to stick to the sort of resume approach, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. We get that stuff all the time. We define ourselves that way all the time. So let the imagination ramble a little bit. And define yourself more in terms of your soul shining through. Yeah. And if you want to, you can email me your essay or a part of it at jcross. And then Gabriel, would you type this in, please? That's yeah, jcross. I'm sure you know how to spell that. At outlook.com. And if you don't have any problem with it, perhaps I'll share from some of these writings on the next show, because this is the first part of a 3-series program. This is the introductory chapter, the free kind of see if you like it, if this is something you'd like to work with more. Our next chapter, next Tuesday night, the same time, is going to be on initiation. It's going to focus on initiation. Very powerful practice of claiming parts of ourselves, of honoring parts of ourselves, of celebrating parts of ourselves that oftentimes get overlooked. So hope you'll consider joining us. I think it's a pretty reasonable price. It's only $20 for the next 2 classes. And they'll have a somewhat similar setup. I'll probably present some material, lead some energetic practices for the first hour, and then open it up for questions, comments after. And we can stay on probably as long as half an hour if people have an interest to do that. So people will have a chance to discuss their personal situations, anything that's come up for them, anything they want some more clarity about, whatever you would like to talk about. I'll be available for that. So at this point, if you have any questions, you can fire away. To sign up, you can do that through Toci, and that's www.toci.org. I'd be happy to help you out there. So if anybody wants to chat, just type it in. We will chat. Wow, I think you're still around that campfire. That's a good place to be. I don't know if I would have come back so quickly. I tend to keep an eye on the clock, and it was presented as an hour long. But again, if there are questions, anything needs to be addressed, we can keep going, no problem. Maybe I should tell some jokes. Oh, here's one. Steve. Hey, Steve. Is a link for the next week's session here at the same URL? No, it's going to be a different one. So once you sign up, they'll send you an email with that address. Good question. Thank you. Hey. Haven't seen you in a while, buddy. I miss you. I miss your Didge, too. This has been great. Thank you, Adam. Many thanks, Jai. Do you ever come to Austin? I used to come to Austin all the time. I was there 10 times one year. And I live in New Mexico, northern New Mexico. So I was just driving back and forth, and I got sick of it. I will probably be there this spring. And that'll be announced through Toci. I'll do something through them, I'm sure. Just haven't worked out the details yet. But I've been away for a while. I haven't been there since last summer, and I miss it. So yeah, I'm due for a trip or 2 this year. This has been recorded for future listening, yeah. And everybody will get an email about how to access it. I mentioned we have 50 in the circle, and it looks like there are, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 on the broadcast tonight, so I'm thinking those others are gonna be checking it out too. Thank you. Ooh, Maori shaman ancestor, 12 feet tall. Yeah, I think you definitely need to go back and continue that discussion, Gentle Bear. And if you want to share part of that with me, send it to the email. Doesn't look like that went up, but again, that's Jaicross, JAICROSS @outlook.com. I only go to Arizona in like Monument Valley. I love the Dene people, the Navajo reservation, and so most of my time's up there. I do a lot of global stuff these days. It's just so convenient. Okay, I'm looking forward to next week too. And I tell you, I think $20 is a good price. I came up with that figure. I didn't want anybody to be priced out of it. I wanted everybody to have the opportunity if they wish to continue. And this is the starting session. We're going to continue to deepen. So it's not going to get lighter and fluffy and frilly. This is really for people who want to dive in deep. Oh, good. Thanks, Gabriel. Good seeing you too, Russ. Yeah. Okay, so last chance for questions about anything. Once again, I encourage people to send me an email, something about your experience, maybe around the campfire, or how things went for you tonight, maybe around that homework assignment, where you really, really get in touch with that inner being. We're going to talk about this a little more in terms of masculinity, because I think for a long time the women in our culture have had a freer reign on expressing themselves this way and exploring in this way. And so, we're catching up, and that's a good thing. Okay. Good night, everybody. Hope to see you all next week. What is the story of the beginning of your journey? I think that's going to have to wait till next time. Good night.